I am continuing my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around a bit as I move along. So we are now reading the story of the Anti-Nephi-Lehies. This is near the end of the missionary work of the sons of Mosiah. 10th year of the reign of the judges, approximately. Alma and Amulek have been preaching in Ammonihah, kicked out, all that stuff. Now the Lamanites are preparing for war. During the 10th year, they started to prepare for war. The old king died, Lamoni's father, new king of the Lamanites, taking on him the name of Anti-Nephi-Lehi. And we read in chapter 24, the first half, how they buried their weapons as a covenant to God that they would never again kill another man, another human. That was the first half of chapter 24. Now we're going to pick this up, finish the chapter out. We're going to start in verse 20. Now when the people saw that they were coming against them, they went out to meet them, and prostrated themselves before them to the earth, and began to call on the name of the Lord. And thus they were in this attitude when the Lamanites began to fall upon them, and began to slay them with the sword. And thus, without meeting any resistance, they did slay 1,005 of them. And we know that they are blessed, for they have gone to dwell with their God. Now when the Lamanites saw that their brethren would not flee from the sword, neither would they turn aside to the right hand or to the left, but that they would lie down and perish, and praised God even in the very act of perishing under the sword. Now when the Lamanites saw this, they did forbear from slaying them, and there were many whose hearts had swollen in them for those of their brethren who had fallen under the sword, for they repented of the things which they had done. And it came to pass that they threw down their weapons of war, and they would not take them again, for they were stung for the murders which they had committed. And they came down, even as their brethren, relying upon the mercies of those whose arms were lifted to slay them. And it came to pass that the people of God were joined that day by more than the number who had been slain. And those who had been slain were righteous people, therefore we have no reason to doubt but what they were saved. And there was not a wicked man slain among them, but there were more than 1,000 brought to the knowledge of the truth. Thus we see that the Lord worketh in many ways to the salvation of his people. Now the greatest number of those of the Lamanites who slew so many of their brethren were Amalekites and Ammonites, the greatest number of whom were after the order of the Nehors. Now among those who joined the people of the Lord, there were none who were Amalekites or Ammonites, or who were of the order of Nehor, but they were actual descendants of Laman and Lemuel. And thus we can plainly discern that after a people have been once enlightened by the Spirit of God, and have had great knowledge of things pertaining to righteousness, and then have fallen away into sin and transgression, they become more hardened, and thus their state becomes worse than though they had never known these things. This is a fairly common doctrine. The more you know, the farther you fall. But just picture this here. Picture here what's going on. We know the Anti-Nephi-Lehies simply kneel down and start praying. They don't try to run, and they don't fight back. And so the Lamanites come in and start killing them. But notice, most of the killing is actually done by the Amalekites and the Ammonites. The Lamanites come in and they're following the Amalekites and the Ammonites. But they don't want to kill their brethren. And when they see that they're not fighting back, they were probably told that this was a great conspiracy to bring them into bondage. That if this new Nephite heresy that was spreading among the Lamanites got hold, then the Lamanites, they would lose their own authority, they would lose their own freedom. And so they went to fight and put down the rebellion. They would put down this new threat. Now that's just speculation on my part, but that's what it seems like, most likely something like that. Because the Lamanites, almost as soon as they get there, don't want to fight because they're not fighting back. They're not trying to take anything from us. But the Amalekites and the Ammonites, they want to kill anybody who believes in God. They're trying their best to destroy any true faith. If they could, they'd try to kill God himself. The Lamanites, on the other hand, they'd throw down their weapons and they kneel down with the rest of them. They said, no, we're not fighting, we're not doing anything. And so they refused doing, meaning the Amalekites and the Ammonites were trying to egg them on. They were trying to push them on. And the Lamanites simply said no. Now, I think that there were more Lamanites than there were Amalekites and Ammonites, because once the Lamanites put down their weapons and refused to fight, the killing stopped. And so the Amalekites figured that there weren't enough of them to do anything else and left. But also note that a number, 1,000 men are killed here. Or men, women, we don't know. 1,000 of the Anti-Nephi-Lehies are killed. But more than that join the church. They repent and are converted. Now, it doesn't say all the Lamanites who threw down their weapons repent and are converted. Some are. Others simply refuse to fight and they leave. And we will see what goes on with them in the next chapter. So I will see you there, chapter 25.